6th annual virtual conference. We're so happy you're here, and we have a lot of attendees from all over the world. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. What a year we have had. From a product perspective, we have released a new base EUX score, providing you with the objective metric of measuring end user experience from base in pre-production and production. We also have introduced the new VSI Max, a new capacity metric that will help you with measuring capacity in pre-production or in the cloud. And commercially, we have signed up our largest deal with one of the biggest banks in the world, which is focused on managing user experience strategically, relating to continuous engineering. And we are so happy that we're able to sign up this customer. With the largest bank we signed up, there's a confirmation for us a lot more customers are taking end user experience seriously. Also proven by the fact that a lot of our customers are hiring chief experience officers with one task only, which is I want to keep my customers, I want to keep my employees. Certainly in these uncertain times of a looming recession, of people working from home more, and keeping employees and keeping customers is obviously a main focus. So at Local VSI, we believe that this is going to be the year of the reliable digital workspace, focusing on making sure you are ahead of the curve, you are managing the change, and you have a lot of confidence that any change will not have an impact on this reliable digital workspace. Because it's still happening. Just last week, we had a hospital in Maastricht, in the south of the country, which was offline for a period of time because a change was done without properly testing it. We had a large outage from a federal server system in the US, where from the VA to other large federal organizations could not use the EHR system, which is obviously devastating. And if you ask Woody, with the number of updates that are coming, which have a DEFCON 1 or DEFCON 2 even, not any change you want to do without testing it properly, obviously. So today's world, if you look at technology, there's also a lot happening. We have VMware, where Broadcom announced the acquisition. So what's going to happen with VMware? Where are they going to focus on? It's still uncertain. Same goes for Citrix. What's going to happen with Citrix? A lot of our customers are uncertain because they have larger VMware or Citrix environments. So the obvious may be, let's go to AVD or let's go to AWS. Okay, what does it mean? How mature is the technology? How are we able to predict the cost and the user experience? Is any application running in the cloud? Where? How do I manage it and govern it? And then the real fact, there's constant updates. So how do you make sure you keep it all in control? That's really what a lot of our customers are struggling with. Some more questions from our customers is just a simple fact. If I go to the cloud, which cloud instance do I choose? And more important, what's the cost? At what user experience, right? How do I know if all my applications still work after a change? Which obviously all goes back to the change. Changes is constant. You want to manage it. Disruption doesn't have to be, because we're able to help you here. So already spoke a little bit about it. Our new EUX base score, basics. We're going to talk about it later. We believe this is a fantastic metric you need to use in pre-production and production to give you the insight what's going to happen after any change, and constant changes that are happening. Also, unplanned changes will give you this very, very valuable insight on the performance of your environment. So, for today, we're all about delivering a great user experience. We're all about things just need to work all the time, but more importantly, at the right price. Be in control with a low effort as possible. So we have a full focus on automation. With that being said, thank you very much. Enjoy the day. And Mark, take it away. Thank you.
That's the quote for 2022, right? I'm still muted. So, all right, thank you very much. Thank you for attending the VDI or the Login Vision Summit for 2022. I'm really excited you're here. We see people joining us from all over the world. We have a lot of attendees. We even have people here in our offices visiting us. So if you're here right next door, thank you for stopping by. Drinks are on me, so please enjoy yourself. Eric has talked a little bit about the why we exist as a company, why our products are here, and why you perhaps today are also here. But for now, I want to take you on a small journey through what we've done this year, what's happening in the market, what we see that a lot of you are doing, and a sneak peek of what products are coming. Eric already briefly showed BenchX. Don't worry, there's going to be demos, there's going to be charts, it's going to be nerdy, it's going to be geeky. There's also going to be an overview of the things we've done. So with that, let's get started. Let's do a small introduction, right? Analyzing the market. We've been doing a lot of it. And we see that a lot of you have reported that changes are coming in faster. Now, 73% of you, as you can see on screen, have indicated that, but they've indicated that it's at least 8.3 times faster over the last few years. The Digital Enterprise Journal has actually just released a white paper on this. You can find more information on this on our social channels, on our website, I'm sure, that you can read through this. But changes are coming in faster. Now, how do you know that these changes are going to have a positive impact on end user experience? How do you know that all of your applications still work after you roll out these changes? This is a concern that many of us are sharing at this point. Now, 67% of organizations from the same report have indicated that they have trouble finding out which change is actually causing problems. And this is obvious to explain, right? Many people still update typically their desktop image when we're talking about end user computing about once a month. Now, this means that you're putting together a lot of changes. Which change, when I put the whole technology stack, was responsible, and when I put the whole technology stack together, was responsible for breaking my image or for my performance or my end user experience? I don't know, because I did so many at this time. Now, we're trying to get to a model where all changes are being done individually, are tested individually, and being brought to production individually. And based on that, automatically go to production. But a big time-consuming item in there is testing. So today I want to talk to you about how testing can save you a lot of time, how testing can keep you out of trouble, and how testing will make sure that your end user experience is always great. Also, if you do have questions, feel free to use the Q&A box. There's a chat. Your questions will appear on my screen, so sometimes you will see me looking down. I will try to answer them promptly. If you have any other feedback, you can also leave it in there. Again, thanks for visiting. For our Canadian and American friends, I believe there's also a coffee giveaway, so you can find a voucher code and even get a free coffee. Just in case this story is not very interesting, it will keep you awake. Now, we've asked people all over the world, IT admins, peers of us, what are the biggest challenges with your on-premises, your own data center today? And let's look at these answers. And a lot of them obviously revolve about user experience. Number one, performance with voice, webcam, and VoIP. This is very complicated in a centralized desktop environment, but even in environments where there's still a legacy VPN coming in, or just a lot of desktops doing this, we see that there's a lot of stress on the systems. However, there are solutions, GPU offloading, endpoint offloading. These can be lifesavers when it comes to conferencing. They can have a big performance gain. But how do you measure this? How do you scale for capacity? What capacity per server can you get? And how can you improve this is a common question. Third place, cost reduction. Has to do with capacity planning, right? How many users can you fit on the same environment? And how can I make that go more smoothly? Security, another big impact on performance. People sometimes say, well, security is just a given, has nothing to do with performance. You wouldn't believe the amount of security tools that we see that are wreaking havoc into end-user computing environments, especially the newer ones that are using AI and such to determine whether something is good or bad, have the potential to keep your environment very secure, but also have the potential to break it down to its knees when it comes to performance. So definitely something to keep an eye out. And the last one that I want to mention in this chart is migration to the cloud. Most of our customers today that are thinking about migrating to the cloud are doing small trials. Citrix DAS, Microsoft AVD, VMware Cloud, you name it, and people are trying it on the different cloud providers, obviously. But how do you decide which model which instance size is correct for you. We're going to talk about all of these things. However, there are also people who are already going to the cloud. Now, after this session, my friends Ruben, Dennis, and Christian, we will do a session on DaaS like a Pro, where we've surveyed or are currently surveying the market for what are you doing. So this is the survey that's similar to VDI like a Pro, but truly focused on DaaS. So if you have an interest in that, please go to DaaS like a Pro and check out the survey and perhaps participate in it. But this is a sneak peek, and in half an hour from now, you will see a lot more of the answers coming in. But one of the questions we asked is, what is the biggest challenge when it comes to moving to the cloud? And without any surprise, cost is the top answer. Now think for yourself, what do you think is the number 2 answer, right? Performance. Third place, trust in public cloud services, knowledge, and resistance to change. Now, at Login VSI, we believe we can help you with the first 3. So let's look at how our software that you've been potentially using for a very long time, but also if you're new, we're going to take a look at it. Don't worry, how we can help you go there without any hassle, without any fuss, being extremely confident in what is happening. Now, for those of you who haven't seen our software recently, there have been some big changes. This is Login Enterprise. Perhaps you're still on the older product, Login VSI. I highly encourage you to make the switch to Login Enterprise because it has everything that you're used to and much more. Because if I talk about load testing, which is a very common use case for our product, a lot of people still remember these charts, right? The VSI Max charts. And believe me when I say they look completely different now. Not only are they much more beautiful, but they also pack a lot more information. And at the end of this session, I will also show you what we are doing in the upcoming time to provide you with even more information. I won't do just theory. We'll base that on an actual use case at a customer. Now, load testing is one of the most common use cases. But did you know you can also do application compatibility testing with Login Enterprise? And application compatibility testing is the art of quickly checking if all of your applications still work after any change. Let's say you have 100 or 500 or maybe even 5,000 apps. Can you make sure after every change you make that they still start, that they still work? We can help you with that, fully automated, of course. And last but not least, continuous testing. And continuous testing is our test in production. This is where we let a handful of users log onto your desktops continuously, as the name implies, and use your line of business applications. Could be Epic, could be Cerner, anything you want. We go through it, we log on from different sites, and we tell you exactly what's working, what's fast, what's slow, where your user experience is being impacted, and also give you advice on where the bottlenecks are. Start to optimize this, because the most important thing is to look at this from the user's perspective and start to optimize from there. If you are only looking at CPU, if you're only looking at memory, you don't know what the user is experiencing. Everything can be green in monitoring, the user experience can be bad. Everything can be red in monitoring, and user experience can still be good, right? So we think that it's vital to also add this capability to your environment. Now, when I talk to customers, one of the first questions I typically get is, I understand it. I want to start testing, but where do I start? What's a good starting point to start using the software? And it depends. It really depends on what you're trying to do. So let's go through all of these use cases and quickly describe each one and see what they're doing. The first one and the easiest one to get started with, in my opinion, it works in every environment, whether it's on-prem, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's traditional desktops, whether it's VDIs, is application compatibility testing. This is quickly logging onto a desktop, automated, of course, running through all of the applications and giving you a pass or fail. The second one would be continuous testing. This is the art of letting users work in your production environment amongst actual real users. Now, this will give you a feedback loop on whether things are working, but also good insights on trends and performance over time. Now, if you run this long enough, we could, for example, already alert you of trouble 30 days ahead of time. We can project it out. We look at application response times. We know the thresholds that you set. So ideally, already 30 days in advance, you see, hey, if this application is slowly becoming slower, we can mitigate that. You can look at that. And this is really trying to stay ahead of trouble. That's really going to be a theme for this day, I guess. And last but not least, what most people know is for the load testing. This is the most fun part, admittedly. This is where you break one server, one instance, a complete environment. The bigger, the better. but we understand the logistical challenges of doing a 5,000 user test. So small tests are also really good. If you want to know if a change has an impact on your performance, go ahead and test it. This could be a small change, maybe an update to antivirus, or a big one, like red bleed fixes for your CPU, the latest leaks there. Now, if you're interested in that and really want to geek out, Hilco Lantinga has a session later where he's going through a lot of these things. He has so much data that he's been collecting with Login Enterprise over the last year. And if you want to geek out, that's your go-to session. You'll really enjoy that, and you'll really deep dive with our product and beyond. So to summarize, application testing. I need to know all of my applications work every time I do a change. Continuous testing. Is the performance of my desktops in production consistent? And also, can I get an alert when something is going slower, right? Or not working from remote sites? Are they all online? We even have customers comparing the Wi-Fi performance versus, wired connections, or put endpoints at users' homes. It's all possible there. Now, did something change without my knowledge? Especially in cloud and with SaaS software, there's a lot of components that are moving. And as an infrastructure admin or as a desktop admin, I'm not necessarily aware of all of the changes that are happening around me. So how can I know that even if I didn't touch anything, somebody else did not drop the ball, right? How do I know everything is still working as good as it was yesterday? And by doing these tests in production, and because the robot users are very sensitive to change, we can identify immediately when something has gone wrong. And we notice that if you, throw it into the organization and say, hey, listen, half an hour ago, performance degraded on this environment. Who was doing something? People will still remember. If you only find out 2 weeks later in monitoring, nobody remembers what they were doing or is able to still figure it out. So the closer you can get that test to the change, the better. Now, obviously, there's line of business applications. If you're a hospital, you want to know if you can find your patients, if you can find their allergies, if you can do that in a decent time frame. So in continuous testing, in production, I recommend use the applications that your general population is also using. If 80 or 90% of your organization is using one application and they're using it most of the time, that will be a good candidate to do a continuous test on. But it's already a very good start to just start with what we know as the knowledge worker, right? The Microsoft Office or Windows 365 user that logs onto a desktop, Windows 10, Windows 11, multi-session, Windows Server, doesn't matter, and uses Outlook, Edge, Excel, Word. Because even just using standard applications already gives you a lot of insight in performance. From there on, you can start to tailor it and implement the line of business applications you want and set the thresholds exactly as you wish and get service level agreement reports and everything you wish for. Last but not least, and I'm not going to stick very long on this one, is the load testing. This is what we're known for. This is what we've been doing for the last 10 years. We're really good at it and essentially helping you do a lot of cool stuff. We do see a really big shift from on-prem there to the cloud, because how do I pick the right instance? Let's take Azure as an example. If I go to Azure and I need to pick an instance size for my Windows 10 or Windows 11, let's say multi-session host, how do I pick the right instance? I've seen the list many times. The list is endless, and even I don't know which one to pick and what's the best combination between cost and performance, I'd say, right? So we've got some examples there for you coming up. Now, to give you an order of magnitude, the size of things, right? For application compatibility testing, how many test users do you need? Well, typically one is enough. One test user can test one application every 30 seconds. If you want to go faster than that, there you go. If you want to do continuous test, I say a handful of users on a typical environment is way enough to give you a granular scale of how things are going from different sides. And last but not least, load tests. Well, essentially, you want to go to the size of your organization or the size of the environment and a little bit more, anticipating on growth, of course, right? You don't want to, if you need to hit 1,000, you're not going to test 1,000. You're going to see at what time it really breaks. When we're talking about applications, for application compatibility testing, you test all of your applications. If you have 500, you test 500. If you have 1,000, you test 1,000. The good thing is you can load all of these applications into Login Enterprise automatically. So you don't have to sweat. You don't have to do any work. You can automatically get those in the product and start testing immediately. There's no workloads that need to be made. just import and run the test. And you'll already be making big gains towards knowing if applications work. And it's actually funny that a lot of customers, when we implement this, when we import all of their applications, the first time they run it, they find applications that don't work, that they even didn't know that didn't work. And they might have been broken for such a long time already. Secondly, the continuous testing, like I said, multiple users, a handful, and typically your top 5 applications that your generic user population is also using. Outlook, Cerner, Epic, SAP, commonly used applications. But within those applications, you take a level of detail, right? You go in and actually do operations that are important to your business, making sure that that flow also works. Last but not least, the load test, few applications. Just start with the knowledge worker profile that's in there. It uses Office, it uses Edge, it does what a regular user does, and it gives you a baseline of performance, right? So you can make it more precise from there, but at least you start testing. So with every change you start making after that, maybe your monthly patches, you know, are they going to be better or worse? And you can anticipate on capacity, you can anticipate on costs, and work from there. Now, costs are obviously very important, but what's even more important is that if you're comparing us to other solutions in the market, Login VSI or Login Enterprise, I should say, the product is the only one that can test pre-production and production environments. And this really helps you to stay out of trouble. And the cool thing is you can even compare them. You can compare pre-production and production, but you can also, let's say you have different clusters of different ages. You can compare them. What do they cost? What do they deliver when it comes to scalability? What do they deliver when it comes to performance? And make choices based on that. Now, how does one measure user experience? I showed you the very old chart at the beginning of this presentation with the VSI Max. However, VSI Max was really a unit of scale. And sometimes you don't have the room to test with 1,000 people. You just want to know, hey, I have one person here. If I had to score this machine between a 1 and a 10, what score would I give this machine? Obviously, we try to make this an automated process. Take the gut feeling out, and we've trained our robot to give a sensible number here. Obviously, if it's, from 0 to 4, it needs an improvement. And this is a nice way of saying that it's really slow. 5 and 6 is good. It's probably your budget option, right? You're being sensible when it comes to cost, but you're also being sensible when it comes to performance. So there's nothing wrong with that, but you are at risk of dropping into performance a little bit. Everything above a 7 is great. And for those of you who now think, I want to deliver a 10, I will accept that you take the challenge, but it's going to be very hard because we test with all the technology vendors, Intel, AMD, VMware, Citrix, Dell, and so on. And the 10 is typically just out of reach, right? We try to keep it there. So I want to challenge you. If you want to get to a 10, that's fine, but it is going to be extremely complicated, and I will definitely compliment you if you do make it. Now, having a 0 or a 10 obviously also has business implications. Nowadays, talent is hard to retain within your company. If you offer people a shitty experience on their desktop, they're not going to stay working in your organization. However, if you go for excellent, go for the 10, it's probably a little bit too expensive, right? So you need to find that balance, and we can help you with that. I even have a surprise for you coming up on there. EJ already mentioned BenchX. So in a minute, we'll actually go into that and show a short demo of what that looks like. Now, the good thing about a number from 0 to 10 is that everybody understands it as well. An end user, the business, and also IT, right? It's one simple consumable number. But don't worry, you can also still get your VSI Max. Now, the VSI Max and the EUX score are closely related. If your VSI Max, if your EUX score starts to drop significantly, we will trigger the VSI Max. So this will help you find the scale of your environment. Typically rather low if you're testing an instance in the cloud, really big if you're doing multi-host on-premises data center tests. Could be in the thousands. Now, I talk a lot about cost, and I mentioned choosing the right instance in Azure is one of those things that is just very complicated. Here's an example of that. These are 2 instances that, from a pricing perspective, are exactly the same, right, to the cent. From the specifications, the vCPUs, they differ a little bit, but how do you know which one is better? how many users fit on there, what will their performance be. Obviously, you could find out in production, but the difference might be really small, or it might actually be rather big. And this is just one example. We picked 2 instance sizes in Azure and compared their performance. Same price, different outcome. And this is something that is, it's one of those intricate things. And also, finding the right one, the one that works for me, might not necessarily be the fastest one for you. We also see differences here when it comes to the time of testing. Some data centers at night are busier, not so busy as during daytime. Or generations of data centers in the cloud might also differ. So choosing another data center, also in your own region, might actually be very beneficial. But the question is, how do you know? Now, from experience, unfortunately, I can tell that mistakes are costly. I was doing a small test in AVD, and I budgeted for 5K. Unfortunately, I think my employer is watching this with, a sad smile. It did cost me 50K in the end. So mistakes are easily made here. We do performance testing every day. We are in the cloud every day, different clouds every day. Mind you, we are working with all the brightest vendors in the cloud every day to see what performance is like. And still these mistakes were being made. So it's, just a lot cheaper to test, I guess. Without further ado, I would like to show you BenchX, and I'll give you a short demo of that. So while I switch to my other machine and share my screen, I hope you can still hear me. There we go. Now, this is a prototype, but it's interactive. So we are about to release this tool, and we aim for the end of the year. And this tool will allow you to test the EUX score on every single machine, but without all of the infrastructure required to do a load test. So without any infrastructure components, you can just download this tool, double-click it, and see what the performance of your machine is. So I'm just quickly going to run through this and show you what it's like. I want to know, for this machine, what is my EUX score? I've downloaded the tool. It's very simple. Next, finish. I hit check, and we can see my local machine in this example gets an 8.2, which is a very, very good score. Now, mind you, this is a local machine, so the performance is good to be expected, right? I'm the only one on this platform, so there's no major problems here. But let's see when I start to log on and maybe test another desktop. So let's imagine that this is a desktop in the cloud. I also want to check it, and I get a different score. Hopefully it's going to be a good one, right? Oh no, it's a 4. So you see, it's really easy to check a single machine and compare it to another. Now, whether these are different laptops, whether these are virtual desktops, that doesn't matter. You can simply get a score, you get your performance, and will allow you to keep track of your history, compare this with peers, and so on and so forth. But this is a small announcement. We're aiming to release this before the end of the year, and we hope that this gives you easier use of the EUX score without all of the infrastructure. Did I already mention it's free? Of course I did, right? Now, let's talk a little bit about automation and integration. This is very near and dear to us, but also very important. Now, we know that many of you are doing automations. And if we look at a typical flow of updating your VDI image, we see that most people take an image, they install applications, take a snapshot, create a bunch of clones, push it live, and then from there on, open it again and start to edit it. And then they rinse and repeat. However, after many times, could be one time, sometimes, could be 50, could be 500 times, things break. Doesn't matter how hard you try, at some point, especially if you're doing things manually, which a large part of the IT admins today is still doing, things will inevitably break. So what can you do here? And the typical answer is automation. Now, most of you are doing this with MDT or CCM. These are perfectly fine choices. In Azure, obviously, people are choosing a little bit more for the modern solutions like Intune. They add a little bit of PowerShell to it. But in the end, even with automation, 1 in X changes will fail. It will be less, but you will be doing more changes because you've automated the process. So effectively, you've become more efficient at breaking your environment. So keep that in mind. It's not just about speeding up, it's also about making the process better. So let's simplify this view a little bit, right? Build base OS, install applications, do performance optimizations, because if you don't do that, things will just be too slow. Scale up and move to production. Now, the most typical choices that we see for our customers here are VMware OS operating system optimization toolkit, a VMware Horizon, also on-prem. Of course, we still see a lot of Citrix there. They're interchangeable in this picture. And then push to production is typically manual or a bit of PowerShell magic at our average customer. And like I said, this is great, it's automated, but it still breaks. So what do we recommend? Well, actually very simple. It looks daunting because it's a lot more steps, but as I explained, most of these are already automated, right? But we recommend that you test and validate between every step. Build the image, install all of the applications, test if they still work, right? The automated compatibility testing. Only when you know that all of your applications still work, you go to the next step, right? You scale up. You can do a load test. You can see if there's an impact on performance, maybe a single server test, maybe a full environment test, depending on the organization and the availability of test hardware. And last but not least, of course, you keep track of the performance and availability in your production environment. If only I knew what product to use for that, right? So I would recommend you do that with Login Enterprise. But the process is something that's more important. Make sure that you do testing on a small scale, but also on a large scale. And this list is not new. The development organizations of this world have long figured this out. So we're taking a technique that's figured out for one set of companies, development software companies, and we're applying it to another industry, the end user computing industry. And I think if we as IT admins pick this up, there's a lot of advantages that we can still make from this. Now, if you want to go even further, our dream customer is doing all of this with ServiceNow or Jenkins or Harness. They're automating the whole process. And in essence, they're probably not even seeing our product anymore. It's all integrated, and we deliver a pass or fail from the user perspective on the full stack. And the full stack, mind you, is very important, because only when you put everything together, you can measure, you can test, you can validate if the outcome is going to work. There are solutions out there that can test individual applications even before you install them and tell you, hey, the chance of success is low or high. But you don't know how these applications will react together. So that's important. Test it at the end result. Test it from your own user's perspective. But, of course, without bothering the end user, right? You don't want to find out with 5,000 people that something doesn't work. You could have prevented that. Now, if you've automated all of that, typically we also see that we report back automatically. This is an example that we use in our lab. We report back into Teams. This could be anything, right? You can get an email, you can get another piece of software to do the next step in your automation, but I always find it interesting to see this. Now, if you are a Login Enterprise customer today, and you are not doing this, or you don't know how to do this, just hit us up. We have the Q&A open, or if you're watching the recording, feel free to reach out, and we're more than happy to also get you set up with this and integrate this nicely into to your environment and hopefully make your life a little bit easier. Now, we've asked around a little bit in the world, the VDI Like a Pro survey, 1,641 IT admins globally. How much are you willing to pay for your virtual desktop in the cloud per year? And because I'm Dutch, I've taken the Dutch price as a reference point. Now, mind you, all the things people say about Dutch people are probably true. So it's a bit on the cheaper side than the global average. But the global average, typically for a desktop in the cloud, price per user would come down to 45 euros. What do you think for the Dutch? 39. Now, why is this important? Well, we noticed that it's important to find the price point per user. So you can deliver that, and so you can measure the impact and also report that back into the chain. It's not just about the amount of users you can run on the environment, but it's also depending on the price, right? The price should be good. Now, use a simple report, and my colleague Paul will do a very big deep down on this later on. But we want to try to help you to optimize these costs. So let's look at this for a second and let this work in, right? Typically, a vendor will produce a white paper. They say, hey, this is our new server, or this is our new cloud, or this is our new operating system, and the EUX score for it is an 8. And typically these tests are done by a technical marketing department. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's marketing. And just like the mileage for your car when it comes to fuel, it will be the absolute best it can possibly do. So let's say they aim for an UX score of an 8 and 1,400 users on that piece of kit. Once you add your own image to that, it probably goes down a little bit. So to a 7.6 maybe, and 1,000 users. Now this is all theory, right? I just plugged in some numbers and you can see the result. Then when you start to do updates, the number goes down even more. Just look at your own machine, right? If you buy a new notebook, it's new and fresh, but a year later or 2 years later, it's becoming slow. The same happens with your virtual desktop if you don't take care of it. But if you don't measure it, you don't know, right? And then last but not least, I add a security tool and my score changes again. Now, this is the first security tool in the world where I see the UX score go up. So that's probably a typo in the deck. But we do see that the capacity comes down nicely with that. And the capacity obviously indicated as the VSI max here. Now, I started with a price of $2 million, hypothetically, for this environment, right? Based on 1,400 users. But if I can't get 1,400 users in there anymore, I probably need to correct the price. So it goes from 2 million to 2.8 million. And you can see there's a lot more details coming out. I'm not going to discuss these. I'll leave that to my colleague Paul, who has a lot more expertise with this and who's going to do a deep dive into all of this information. But this will help you to figure out that sweet spot between what the vendor is promising, the capacity you need, the capacity you have, and over time, how it will track. And this also helps you in the negotiations, right? If somebody has promised you a 1,400 users would fit on that system and you can only get to 1,000, that's worth negotiating. Not just for the hardware, because it also has implications for licensing and other costs. And mind you, like I showed with the desktops in Azure, instances are also very, very important to test. Now, I want to take you into an environment of a customer that we've been working with. And this was a very interesting customer. It was a large financial, they have a big revenue, and they were working with a large IT partner as well. So in theory, everything was supposed to go right here. All of the experts were in the environment. Yet, when we started to test, we saw a steep degradation in the performance after a certain amount of users and after a certain amount of time. If they would have gone live with this, the performance would have been really, really bad. Now, at the time, Login Enterprise could identify the issue, but they were asking, can you give us more of a root cause analysis? Can you help us figure out exactly what the problem in my environment is? And this is a while ago, right? So this functionality was not there yet in Login Enterprise. So you can see the charts are a little bit clunky, but they get the work done. One of the first things we saw is that there was a big difference in performance per machine. There were 8 different machines here, and number 1 was behaving different than the rest. We took out number 1, they added an additional machine, and funny enough, that one was twice as fast as all of the other ones. So a lot of weird things were happening here, but we couldn't, get our finger behind it. Why is this a problem? Where is this coming from? We have all the numbers, we can see the data, but who is causing this? And this is the moment where you can start to unravel things. As many organizations, what they did is build the whole technology stack, and from there on see, let's start testing now. And then you have so many changes already combined together that it's hard to figure out where to start, right? So we needed to figure out what is the problem here. Is it actually my CPU? Is it my memory? Or is it my disk? Now, typically in VDI environments, we see that CPU is a bottleneck. So that was the first hunch that we had. And we started plotting the UX score for different systems within, or for different metrics within the system. First of all, we looked at our UX score. Secondly, at the application performance, and we could see, yes, indeed, applications are becoming a lot slower. This is no surprise. Then we looked at CPU, but there was nothing happening there. The CPU was doing fine. And mind you, what we do at Login Enterprise is we measure everything from the user perspective. So even without checking the CPU, we can still deduct that based on the things that are becoming slower, it's likely the CPU. For convenience, and Hilko will show this later in his session as well, we can also add together this data. So you can look at, for example, vSphere or Azure performance data, and overlay this with your own test. Then we overlay disk performance. And yeah, quite clear, there is a problem there. However, now we still need to find the guilty one, right? And this is something that it should be an easy process, right? You want to be able to do this after every load test. So they changed something. In this case, changed their security tool. And we did the same test again. Already, when we look at application performance, we can see it's a lot better. And I know these are geeky charts, but you get the concept, right? You try to keep the lines as horizontal as possible for the best performance and the lowest costs. Anyone can do this job, really. We see that there now is a little dip in CPU performance, and there is no dip anymore in disk performance. This means we found the guilty one. Like I said, in this case, a security product. And now it's up to the security tool company, the provider of that software, and the desktop team to figure out, hey, in this combination that we're doing, is there a solution to this? Now, as I said, these charts don't exactly look beautiful. And I also indicated that there were going to be a few forward-looking statements here. So this is what it's actually going to look like in the product. So I wanted to take you on that journey from working with a customer, finding an issue, and bringing it to the product. So by the end of the year, you will also be able to do this root cause analysis and really drill down into issues. Figure out if it's CPU, memory, disk that is impacting your user experience, your application performance, and driving up the cost of your environment. Because these are really hard problems to find with manual testing or with real users. What you saw in the charts, it's a simple matter of fact of doing a test, changing something, right? Trying to figure out the guilty one, doing another test and proving you are right or wrong. It's very scientific, it's very fast, and it allows you to prevent a lot of issues. Now, again, if there are questions, feel free to use the Q&A. I'll be hanging around there a little bit longer. We're also available on social media if you're watching the recording, or you can always hit us up at info@loginvsi.com. With that, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank Erik Jan for his introduction today. I hope you have a great continuation of your event. There's great speakers. I need to speak for a little bit. We have coming up Paul, the dashboard that I just showed you. He's really going to deep dive into that, how you can do costs and savings and get dashboards on that within Login Enterprise. On the other side, we have Ruben and Dennis Dame from VDI Like a Pro, who will show their new DaaS Like a Pro survey. So they have 400 participants, and I will also be in that session probably, that have indicated what they are doing in their VDI environment and what software they're using, what problems they're having. 60 questions, it's mind-blowing. After that, we have Blair, who is talking about Azure, together with Jim Moyle from Microsoft. AVD, of course, they've been, I guess, doing more than a year of research, and they're going to try to put everything that they've learned into half an hour. So that's going to be information-packed. Michael Kent doing something on modernization of your change process. We have sponsors. Parallels is doing app modernization. We have closing the gap between security and employee experience. As you just saw, security can have a big impact on performance, of course. And there is just much more. With that, I want to let you go. I want to thank you very much for your time and have a great continuation of the event. And I'm sure we will see each other a little bit later on in the other sessions. Thank you and goodbye.